Hello everybody. I'm still getting set up here, so just one moment. Hello, good evening. Yes, welcome. Oh, I'm having some technical problems. That's all right. Hello, good evening. All right, well, just 1 minute. I'll be right there. Good evening. Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm having some technical problems. Okay. Hi. Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hi. Oh dear. Let's see here. I've got one of my screens has gone down, everyone. That's all right. We'll make it work. Hello, welcome in. Happy, oh my gosh, what day is it, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Oh my gosh. No, we're okay. I've just got, I have another screen that I like to use to help, and it is not pulling up right now. So it's going to take just a minute here. I'll have to be hump day. Yes, indeed. We like that. Oh my gosh. All right, let me try one more way here. I don't know why, but I'm just not getting the internet on one of my devices here. So hello. Yes, court was dark. Court was dark today. So we have no court today. So it gave us a chance to kind of catch up. It gave me a chance to catch up a little bit here on what's going on. So, all right, I'm still trying to work on my screen here. I'm just not sure. All right. Okay, 1 second. Here we go. Turn it back on again. Turn it off. Turn it on. Oh, there we go. It's working. Yay! Yay! Woohoo! Wrong month. Well, we're doing a recap, and we started in April. So, yep, I've got May right here, everyone. But I want to take us through the beginning, all the way back to the beginning. Yes. Absolutely. So no worries. Yes, phew, that was close. We made it. That's all right. Sometimes sometimes things get thrown off a little bit, but right, not color coded because we're on blue paper. I know, it's shocking. But I found the blue paper wasn't very good with my color coding system. So, if it'll be done in prison, that's funny. So, even if, let's say hypothetically, even if Mr. Trump is found guilty here, and even if he is sentenced to 4 years, even if that occurs, none of that would occur before the debate time. So we just worked too slow, everyone. Sorry. But that's fun. That's a funny question. Oh my goodness. Yep, we just, our system's super slow. And we try to be slow so we don't make a lot of mistakes, but we're definitely very slow. But good evening, happy Wednesday, everyone. So welcome in. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. So welcome everyone, and tonight I'm going to be doing a recap of the entire trial. So I thought this was going to be a great time to do it. I'm just going to walk everyone through. I'm not going to be too detailed on this for everyone that's already been following, but I thought I'd just walk us through and let you know where we are now. We are in Michael Cohen's testimony, so a lot has happened up to this point, and he's going to be the last witness. So I thought it would be helpful to kind of go through and talk about what has happened up to this point. What if he's guilty of misdemeanor charges and not a felony? Right. Well, that a misdemeanor just means it's a different amount of time than that you would serve if you're sentenced to, incarceration. So, also felonies. There are certain other things that come if you are a convicted felon, but it doesn't matter if you're a felon or not. You can still run for president. Does the defense have witnesses? The defense probably does have witnesses. Yes, I would imagine so. If guilty, how many appeals? It depends. It depends on what gets appealed. They can try all different kinds of appeals, multiple different ways, but eventually at the state court level, you can't appeal forever on a criminal case like this particular one. So it just depends on, how many issues he can bring up that he felt he had in trial. How significant is it that the prosecutors decided on Cohen as the last witness? I don't know. I guess to be perfectly honest, I was surprised that they were going to have another witness besides Cohen, but there was this idea that you don't really want to end your story on Cohen because he's such a controversial character. But on the other hand, as you go through and you figure out, well, who else could come back in and wrap the whole case up? And I could not imagine who else that would be. So, and my thought too is that everyone here has testified in all these documents. They've all come in order to set up Cohen's testimony. So for him to be the last person seems to make sense. Appeal the state case to SCOTUS. If there's a constitutional issue, if they're claiming that the law is unconstitutional in New York, they could, but that would be quite something else to do that. Oh my goodness. Yes, so that would be quite the deal. So we'll welcome in everyone. Let's go ahead and get started here. Oh, you bet, Rosie. It is unconstitutional. Well, New York's wow, they're gone. Woo! Moderators. I'm so thankful for it. Yes, if a law is unconstitutional, you can't appeal it. Absolutely. That's we have that federal constitution that protects everyone. So well, convicted felons cannot vote. It's going to depend on your jurisdiction. It will depend on your jurisdiction. So, those rights get taken away, and it'll depend on what's going on, if they've been put back, and so on. So you have to take a look at your jurisdiction. So let's go ahead and get started, everyone, here. Let me walk you through. So we started our case here. Again, I'm literally just going to walk you through every day. I've got sketches for everyone just to remind everyone of what happened each day, but I want to take everyone through the trial. We started again on April 15th, just to remind everyone, and that first week we picked a jury. So by the end of that first week, we did have our jury. We had our alternates as well. We had a big question. A lot of people were really worried. How are we going to get a jury? Was it going to take 6 weeks to get a jury? Judge Mershon, I thought, did an excellent job. Yes, it's May. It certainly is May. But we're recapping, so we have to go back to the beginning, right? So Judge Mershon set it up, knocked it down, was pretty clear about the questionnaires that were done for the jurors, as well as saying kind of en masse, oh, thank you. Oh, fruit, we love fruit. En masse, just saying, look, if you don't think you can do it, tell me now. Let's not kind of drag this out. So we were able to get a jury seated within a week. So within that first week, we had jury. The following week was when we started the testimony. So when we are talking about days, what day of the trial we are on, you may be hearing that in the media. You may be thinking, well, the day when opening statements started. But the trial, day one, actually starts the first day the jurors came in. So we didn't actually hear any testimony until day 5 of the trial. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you are wondering, like, oh my gosh, where are we exactly in the days of trial? It seems like we've only been having witnesses for a couple of weeks, and that's because that first week we're getting the jury set. So then we had the Sandoval hearing. Opening statements, Mr. Pecker was on the stand. He was on the stand for 3 days. We do not have court. We have court's dark on Wednesday. Judge Mershon has other work to do, so we had Pecker going to the 26th. Then we had Ms. Graff come in and testify, Mr. Farrow. Then coming back in, we were out on the 29th. We had no court. Then on the 30th, we did have that contempt finding. And then we also had the continuation of Mr. Farrow's testimony. Now I'll take you through each one of these witnesses as well, but this is just a quick brief overview of what happened so far. Next, on Wednesday, we went dark again. Then we had another contempt hearing situation. This was where we weren't sure if there was going to be jail time. So we did have a finding later of contempt. Then Mr. Davidson was back, was testifying. So Mr. Davidson was on for a bit here. And then the next day on Friday, we had Mr. Doss, we had Miss Longstreet, and then Miss Hicks. So this was the big Hope Hicks testimony, was on day 11. And then day 12, we had Jeff McConney as well as Deborah Tarasoff. Both workers or employees of the Trump Organization were set here. Then on the 13th, we had Sally Franklin come in and talk a little bit about Mr. Trump's books. And then Ms. Stormy Daniels started her testimony. We popped over here to the 14th. Ms. Daniels had quite a bit of testimony. When she finished, we had Madeline Westerhout who testified. Her testimony went into Friday, the 15th as well. And we had a couple of support staff, essentially, to get certain phone calls, tapes, and social media posts in. So we had Mr. Schneider and Ms. Longstreet testify again. And then that takes us to the 16th day of trial, or Monday the 13th of this week. So Michael Cohen was testifying. Then he also was testifying Tuesday, and they started their cross-examination, which brings us here, everyone. All right, so that's kind of the real quick overview of the road that we've been walking down on this trial. But I will take you through kind of who these different people are, again, through the order that we've done this trial in. And to keep in mind, also the state is saying Mr. Cohen will be their last witness. So once they have finished, Mr. Cohen will be cross-examined also on Thursday, and it will be up to defense if they decide to finish, and then there'll be a redirect and a recross. They may finish, I'm not sure. There is no court on Friday, so Mr. Trump can go see his son's graduation, and then we will be back in court on Monday. And at that point, somewhere around in here, we should be done. Once Mr. Cohen's testimony is done, the state will be finished with its case in chief, and so the defense will start going. So at that point, we'll have some idea of what their witnesses will be looking like. So there's the quick overview, everyone, of the calendar. So let's take, do you think he'll actually go to the graduation? I don't know. It's anyone's guess. It really is anyone's guess. I don't know. He asked for it off, so, there you go. I really have no idea at this point. Oh, my goodness. So, all right, everyone, let's go ahead and take a look at these courtroom sketches that I've got of our different people who are involved. Again, friendly reminder that we have 3 primary sketch artists. There are more than this who are sketching throughout this process, but we've got Jane Rosenberg, we have Elizabeth Williams, and Christine Cornell. They're all available online if you want to look them all up. We're very thankful for their hard work. So we can, why do you think he's still winning in the polls? I think the polls are an inaccurate source of popularity, is how I view it. And that's coming from a political science background. So the polls have never bothered me, anyone. Never bothered me at all. So we have here just an opening picture, but I will again walk you through each day of the trial to give you an idea of kind of what happened here. It seems like we've been at trial for months, everyone, but it's only been a few weeks. I know. Yes, the polls are not, well, I mean, yeah, there's there's a lot of things that go on. I'm not saying the polls aren't valuable, but I don't think are a particularly good indicator of what the true feelings are of the people. So that's my thought. So here we go. Let's get started on day 1, everyone. Here's a lovely sketch that we have of our potential jurors coming in. We've got our voir dire process that's starting. We had half of a day of motions before we even started with the jurors on that very first day of trial, if anyone remembers that. That was a bit of frustrating for everyone. Now, on the second day, we did have 7 jurors who were chosen by the end of the second day. So, if everyone remembers, that was very exciting. But then, when we came back on the third day, one of our jurors said that the pressure was too much. The comments being made were too much, and felt that they wouldn't be able to be impartial. And so Judge Mershon was able to excuse that juror, and we went back down to 6. So that's how our voir dire process went. The judge was not very happy about that, and definitely called the media out and said, people chill about that because we're needing to. But it's not a very good bedtime story, Jen. But you need to chill out. You need to leave our jurors alone, or we're not going to get a jury. So with that, they went on and were able to get all 12 jurors and 1 alternate on day 3. And by day 4, we did have a full jury. So day 4 was a Friday, and so court finished up, and that takes us then into the following Monday. Again, this is just all in chronological order, everyone. So, first week is over. Now we're starting the Sandoval hearing, which we already had. You probably heard quite a bit about the Sandoval hearing because Mr. Blanche was sternly discussed by the judge. But they had to talk about if Mr. Trump was to testify, what kind of questions would be within the parameters of cross-examination. That's what the Sandoval hearing is. That's a term used in New York. So after that hearing was done, we had opening statements. We had the state give their opening statement. It went about 45 minutes here. And then we had the defense give their opening statement, and it was about 25 minutes here. So the state set out their entire spiel along with the evidence you're going to see, the witnesses they're going to call. The defense came in and said, nothing happened between Mr. Trump and Ms. Daniels, and nothing was illegal that had occurred. So that's a very, very broad overview of that. Again, this is all available online if you would like to read the transcripts. So with opening statements finished on the very first day, here's another great picture from that first day of opening statements, which was day 5 of the trial. Then Mr. Pecker was called. Mr. Pecker, who is the owner of AMI, so he was the owner of the Inquirer, which is one of the big elements to this whole case. He was called up to the stand in the afternoon, testified for about half an hour that very first day. Now, Mr. Pecker was the first witness, and, in my view, you always call your strongest witnesses first and last. So he was the first witness that set out the case for the state. So here's a picture of Mr. Pecker. He was questioned on direct quite a bit about his company, AMI, and this kind of agreement that he had made to kind of grab those negative stories about Mr. Trump and make sure that they don't get published, to pay people for their stories so that those bad stories wouldn't make it out to the media. So that was kind of this catch and kill scenario, which again, that phrase is not something that we use in the legal field. We would just call this something where you try to get the negative media from being put out there for the candidate. So I think it's great, though, that we've got kind of this little phrase that we're all using now, so we all know what we're talking about when we talk about that. So he went into his relationship and how long he had known Mr. Trump for decades and decades and decades, and how they had kind of helped each other during The Apprentice. Mr. Trump would kind of give insights, free heads up to Mr. Pecker, which he could profit off of, and then he kind of set out how he was able to kind of put down some of the negative stories. Things got quite a bit crazier after Mr. Trump decided to run for president. Mr. Pecker was much more involved in keeping the negative information off the streets by buying it. Now, Mr. Pecker was also involved one-on-one in 2 particular stories. Oh, here we go. 2 particular stories. One is of a doorman who said that Mr. Trump had gotten another person pregnant, and so he paid that doorman off $35,000. And then we have the Karen McDougal, who was someone who claimed to have an affair with Mr. Trump for like 10 months, a year. And while Mr. Trump obviously was married. And so Mr. Pecker had sent out his second in command, Dylan Howard, to go talk to her and buy her story for $150,000, as well as her ability to write some columns and get her name on some magazines. Actually, it was quite a lucrative deal, come to think of it. So he was the one that paid for that, and he wasn't very happy about that. He was supposed to be paid back, and he wasn't paid back. So he kind of went into details of those two instances where there were people involved that needed to be paid off. So what eventually happened here with Mr. Pecker was he's like, hey, I paid two people off already, and that's a lot of money. You haven't paid me back. I'm not going to pay back Miss Daniels. When her story came out, which led to this whole fiasco involving Mr. Cohen. So Mr. Cohen had originally tried to go through a route to pay him back for Miss McDougal's payment, but things got a little hinky, and so Mr. Pecker was like, I'm out, I don't want to be involved anymore. So that was his testimony. He was on the stand for 4 days, and finished his testimony on day 8, which was Friday. So his testimony was finished up with that. I have gone through and read through his testimony, and those are posted up on my TubeView for anyone who is interested. Next, we have Miss Rona Graff, and she was on day 8. Her testimony was very brief, and she testified basically to some of the business practices of Mr. Trump, and that she worked for him. She kind of was a bit of a peppermint because she said, oh, I liked working for him. It was just fine. I worked for him for 35 years. So it was a bit of a breath of fresh air, but she is needed in order to set up the paper trail. So how does the paperwork work with Mr. Trump and his businesses and so on? So that's what she was needed for. In this situation. She was on very briefly for direct, just to kind of set up that authenticity issue that we'll get into later, and then she was off the stand after that. So that was Miss Graff. Next, we had up here Gary Farrow. He was actually on for 2 days because his direct started Friday afternoon and finished on Tuesday morning, Monday the 29th. There was no court. He is the banker dude who was involved with Michael Cohen's bank. So he testified that he had an assistant, was the one who was helping Michael Cohen set up these kind of shell LLCs. Now, Michael Cohen had come in originally to set up a shell in order to pay back Mr. Pecker for Miss McDougal, and came back 2 weeks later and kind of tossed that one aside and said, wait, I want to do a different one. And then he set up the Shell Corporation that was the one to pay for Miss Stormy Daniels $130,000. So it was this huge change in intent within just a couple of weeks. So it was hinky. Everyone knew it was a bit hinky, but they proceeded anyway. So Mr. Farrow here just went through the process of explaining what the emails were that were between them and what the process was here for getting that shell company set up. So he testified again that Friday afternoon and then into Tuesday morning, so into the 9th. Now, on the following Tuesday morning, we also had the contempt finding, so that was a pretty major moment too. He was found, Mr. Trump was found in contempt of court let's get a few more helpful pictures in here. So this is Judge Mershon found Mr. Trump in contempt of court for 9 times for statements that he had made, and had fined him $1,000 each. So this was the first set of finding of contempt. He also made it very clear that if Mr. Trump doesn't knock it off, he's going to go to jail. This was before the hearing that came later where he was charged with his 10th time. So that was another big moment that occurred on the 9th day of trial, or April 30th in the morning. Yes, so that's what was going on there. So let's keep flipping here, everyone. There's more to tell of this story. So there we go. There's Mr. Farrow. We'll say farewell to him. Then after he finished testifying, we had Mr. Davidson take the stand. Now, Mr. Davidson was on the stand for quite a while here. As a jury, I'd want to hear from the expert of election interference. I'm scared they're taking. That's a really good question. So, that I think is really important. The crime itself that they're saying was the intended crime, right? Is this interference with the New York election laws. So that law will be set out and explained to the jury. And so they will be able to make that decision. And they'll basically have 1, 2, and 3. And the question will be, did Mr. Trump do number 1? Did he do number 2? Did he do number 3? And then you move forward. So all of that will be set out very clearly. And in fact, when we get a little bit closer to the end of trial, we'll be able to sit down and actually go through those jury instructions again and really walk through the different elements of the crime here. So that will be very well sorted out by the time we get there. So we've got Keith Davidson starting to testify on day 10 here in the afternoon. Now this was Stormy Daniels's and Karen McDougal's attorney, and we had spoke about him before. I'm not a big fan of Mr. Davidson because he was really kind of playing all sides in order to pull in a profit. So he was pulled in order to kind of set up the plan. What was the plan? What was the money that was supposed to be made? How it was supposed to be made? This kind of checkbook journalism that they're calling it. I mean, do we even know what a checkbook is, everybody? I don't even know anymore. But he came in and basically said, they paid me, I paid her, and that's how it went about. We had this agreement. We had this NDA agreement, so non-disclosure agreement. We had some additional information added to the agreements and so on. So he kind of explained what his role was and kind of as the slimy attorney, and that's what he did. And what he seems to kind of be. I think that's okay. You've got to have some kind of a slimy attorney involved in this situation. And that was Mr. Davidson here. He testified quite a bit. We had him on the stand for a couple of days. We're to check today? Really? Okay. Yeah, I'm not even sure. Do we do checks anymore? I just don't even know. Oh my gosh. All right. So, again, here's another picture of Keith Davidson. He just was asked a lot of different questions about the backstory of these women and why he was involved here. And his interactions also with Dylan Howard as well as Mr. Pecker, because they were really part of a team, and he was part of this whole scheme. He was a critical element, even though he's like, I'm the attorney, but he's the attorney that pulled them in to a situation where this whole thing could occur. So he was a key player in the scheme. So his testimony was very important. Some people say his cross-examination made him come off as slimy, but I don't know how his direct examination didn't make him look slimy. He's the attorney that chased down the National Enquirer to sell a story to, right? And they worked together, so they knew each other pretty well in order to do the scheming here. So, yes. So that was Mr. Davidson. Now, I have not read his full transcripts on Alive yet. I have not read his. They're kind of hard to get through, just because he is kind of a swarmy person. Do you think they have a problem proving criminal intent? I don't. I don't think they have an intent issue. I think what the intent was for is more of the issue. I think we definitely have intent, but was it intent to toss the 2016 or interfere with the 2016 election, or was the intent to just keep it from Melania? That seems to be what the big question is. And I think they've shown over and over again that he really wasn't thinking about Melania. I think the only person that said anything about Melania was Hope Hicks, and her testimony was pretty harsh, though. I mean, she knew Melania was involved, but he was asking about the campaign. So I think it would be hard to walk away from this feeling like all of this was to save his family. I really just don't know about that. So in my opinion, from watching from the outside. But again, I'm not in the courtroom, so I'm not seeing what the jurors are seeing here. But I mean, the intent to cover everything up shows, that negative, the mens rea that's needed in order to convict. That intent is there, but which level the intent was. Is it at an aggravated misdemeanor level or is it at a felony level? That's the question. Is it there for one of the levels? I believe it is. But again, we just won't know until we're back in with the jury. All right, so that was Mr. Davidson's testimony then on the 10th day. Then we will roll over into Friday, the 11th day. It takes a long time between the verdict and sentencing because they have to do a pre-sentence investigation or whatever they call it there in New York, where, the goal, everyone, is supposed to be what's appropriate for accountability. So is that person who has been convicted a danger? So do they need to be kept away from the public? Are they going to do it again? So they need to be watched carefully? Do they need to be rehabilitated in some way? Do they have some kind of major problems that they need to get sorted out before they can be a law-abiding citizen again? I mean, there's lots of different reasons why we have punishments. And so someone goes through and does that assessment. And they'll take a look at Mr. Trump's age. They'll take a look at his work, at what the crime was, at the level of harm that was done, and then make their suggestion to the judge. Judge Mershon then will take his 20 plus years of experience as a judge and make his decision on what he thinks the best accountability will be. So is it fines? Is it probation? Is it, 5 years probation would be the end of the world, I believe, for Mr. Trump, or is it some jail time? So he will make that ultimate decision, but it will take some time. Interviews have to be done. The histories need to be pulled in. If there's, the criminal histories, which he doesn't have any, but education history, background, family, all of that information is all put into an investigation to figure out what the most appropriate sentence is. So all of that has to be done before they can sit down and have a hearing on it. Does this hurt his other cases or no, because it's not relative? Great question, Estelle. And I would say they're not going to be able to use prior convictions in his other cases unless this comes out as so this is a crime of dishonesty because we have fraud involved. And so that can be used for impeachment purposes if he testifies. It's complicated, but he would have to testify, open the door. It could be used to impeach his credibility. But as far as just showing it to the jury, like, hey, by the way, he also got convicted over here, no, that would be very difficult to get that in. So we have to be really careful about that. Do you think his attitude will impact the sentence? Yes. Yes, I do. And I think Judge Mershon has had so much experience and has seen so many defendants. I mean, this is not his first rodeo. So I would definitely say he's got a pretty good idea of what would be appropriate. What would be a type of probation he would get? So a classic type of probation would be, just like what some of the other defendants in Georgia have, which is you have a probation officer, which means you can only go in and out of certain places. You can only travel to certain places. You have to get permission to leave. You can only work in certain places. You're not allowed to use any kind of substances at all. You have to check in constantly with your probation officer. They'll come in and do spot checks whenever they want. They don't have to have a warrant. So his probation officer can ask him to, drop a UA or for a hair stat at any time that his probation officer wants to do that, or search his entire home. Any of his homes, he has no privacy. That's how it goes. And so that would be highly, highly regulated, and he would be answering to this authority figure for years and years. So that would be pretty significant. Can you even imagine Mr. Trump having to call his probation officer every 2 weeks and report in what he's been doing and why he's been doing it? Right? So, and having to ask, like, can I go to Canada, or can I go, I want to go back to Florida, and having to ask permission before he's able to do that. And then any violations, he'd be in front of Judge Mershon again. He'd be standing in front of Judge Mershon with that probation officer saying he's violated the probation agreement. And then Judge Mershon would have to decide whether to throw him in to prison or jail, or give him another shot. So he'd be standing in front of him saying, yes, I did violate it. Yes, give him a UA at least once. Well, he will have at least, if convicted, there are certain standards that everyone goes through. So there are certain things that have to be done in order to get base levels checked. So yes, I mean, that's pretty significant, everyone. I mean, we might think, oh, prison, but for Mr. Trump to be outside of prison, but have every single thing micromanaged in his life. I mean, can you imagine, right? It would be tough. It would be a tough situation. So that's what his probation would most likely look like. Again, you have to just keep your probation officer on alert. He would probably have a team. He would probably have a team of probation officers who would be constantly on watching for him. So yeah, and anyone in his world they could talk to. So no one would be free. So talk about, a gag order issue. That would be another issue, right? If a probation officer says you can't talk to the media and that's part of your probation, and he does, you've broken your probation agreement. Could have an ankle monitor. Very possible. Very possible. That could be part of it. No more trials this year. You never know. You never know. I'm not willing to say we won't have any for sure. I'm not willing to go down that road. Community service could have that. But, one thing that judges have to rule or have to figure out with community service is, will that person actually cause harm to the community if they're out in the community doing community service? So, and I put it like this, like if you think Mr. Trump is going to have to volunteer at the local library as part of his community service, can you imagine the security and the Secret Service and how it would disrupt the library? I mean, all the children's reading area would be, like set into a station for the FBI and Secret Service. So it would really be difficult for him to do. It would be difficult for him to do some kind of community service, although it's possible. He'd have to really be kind of out in the sticks, I think, away from everybody. And that could definitely happen, maybe like at a Can Redemption Center, something like that. I mean, I don't know. But it's possible. It's possible. Yes, his entire inner circle. Yeah, I agree. All right, so he could clean dog kennels. Well, I mean, too, you got to take into consideration who the person is. I mean, he's a elderly person, and I'm not sure that this would be something that would be appropriate. So, the punishment's got to fit the crime, everybody. And Judge Mershon is the one who's in charge, so he'll get it sorted. I have a lot of faith in that. Could be doing community service by being quiet. Could be. Yeah, picking up trash, that would be all right. If there's some ditches out there, yeah, I mean, but in my opinion, if he was out picking up trash, it would be like the Secret Service agents would be really, I mean, come on. Those people are just trying to do their jobs. All right. So moving on. Great questions, everybody. Moving on. So next up, after that, we have here, after Davidson finished, we've got Doug Doss. Now, Doug Doss is one of our kind of structural people. So he kind of set up the tech stuff so that we could get in different telephone, text messages, different pieces of evidence like that. So he had to set up kind of the chain of custody as well as how everything was pulled off of different devices and so on. So he needed to do that in order for that evidence to come in, because Mr. Trump wouldn't stipulate to any of the texts or any of the posts or any of that. He's like, I'm not going to stipulate to it. That's fine. That's his right. So they pulled in this fella here, and he testified to that, again, setting up a lot of our technical evidence. So that was Douglas Doss testifying. And then he was one of three who testified on the 11th. Also, he was involved in the tape too, the taping that Mr. Cohen did on his phone. So which, he was involved to make sure that that was reliable. Next, we've got Miss Longstreet. Now, I do not have a picture of her because she is one of the paralegals out of the DA's office, and so I'm not going to show a photo of her. But Miss Longstreet was called in as setting up this Mr. Trump's kind of social media post, how they got it, the chain of custody again, and how the DA's office was able to start at point one and get to point three when it came to a lot of his social media posts. So she was a paralegal, again, in the DA's office. So that was Miss Longstreet. By the way, she testified twice. She comes back again on day 15 to testify again, setting up more of this backstory for authentication for his social media posts. So she'll be back again. So next up, then, we had on that Friday, Miss Hope Hicks. I have read through her entire transcript. Oh my goodness. So this is up on my Tube of You for anyone who is interested in hearing her actual testimony. Miss Hope Hicks testified to, kind of what happens with in the Oval Office. She was a secretary essentially to Mr. Trump. She had been a kind of a social media fixer, and that's kind of what she still does. So that's how I view her. She's kind of the Michael Cohen of social media or public relations that get out of control. She was involved when the Access Hollywood tape hit the fan. She was involved with that and trying to figure out how to kind of put those fires out. Here we go, in case anyone forgot about that. So she was involved in that. She was also involved in, if there was going to be some articles that were going to be published and trying to get those not to be published. So yeah, PR person, I think, is a good way to do it. So she testified. I think many people realized too, or remember, that she started crying on cross-examination. I think because she realized just about 10 minutes earlier she had given the state the information that they needed, which was she testified that Mr. Trump was not thinking about Melania. In fact, he was only thinking about the campaign, and everybody knew it. And she had just testified to that, and then she started crying. So that was Miss Hicks. And that was day 11, which was a Friday, which takes us then into day 12 here, which was a Monday. So May 6th. Right, so May 6th was day 12. We also had the contempt finding, the 10th finding of contempt on this day as well. So Judge Merchan came back and said, here's number 10. This is it. The fines aren't working for you, so we're done with fines. This is it. Anything more, and you're going to be going into jail. So at that point, he was very upset with how Mr. Trump was speaking about the jury. I think that was his final piece. He was like, that's just not acceptable. And so there was that 10th finding of contempt. So that was first thing in the morning. And then next up, we had Mr. Jeff McConney come in and testify. Mr. McConney worked in the Trump Organization, had been working quite a bit, had been named in multiple situations, in multiple lawsuits that had been involved, finally decided to step down because he was tired of being pulled into all of the lawsuits. Can't blame him. And so he testified essentially to what the deal was. Mr. Wesselberg, which I keep calling Weasel Man, which unfortunately means I keep forgetting his real last name. But Mr. Wesselberg is the CFO, so he's the major money guy, and he was the one that set up the agreement with Mr. Cohen. So he had actually written out what the agreement was going to be with Mr. Cohen. Now, he's in jail, and they did not pull him in to testify. So the next best person was Mr. McConney here. He set out what the agreement was. So we had, let me just write it out for you, everyone, so we figure out where we get to here. We had $130K, which was a wire transfer to Miss Stormy Daniels' attorney. We had $50K for tech services that was put in. Then we had, we grossed up actually that $130 to $360,000 because Mr. Wesselberg said that would look better for taxes. So it would look more like income as opposed to something else. And then Mr. Cohen had a 60K bonus. So with all of this, it came out to 465. Oh my gosh, everyone, I'm terrible with numbers. What was it, 465? We're going to do 465. And I'm going to punt and I'm going to say that number may not. That's a soft number. It's not a firm number. Jay Leno. So this was a huge amount, and it was to be paid in monthly installments of $35,000 to Mr. Cohen, and it's these installments that created the paperwork for the falsifying of the documents. Okay. All right, so he was the one that came in instead of having Mr. Wesselberg, who is in prison at the moment. So instead of him coming in and testifying, we had Mr. McConney here. Now, just to remind you all, this is Wesselberg here, Chief Financial Officer. He was convicted of tax evasion as well as perjury. He's the one that knew all about the money going on in the Trump Corporation. So, yeah, it was quite a bit. 420. That's, yeah. I mean, again, this is a soft number. If I could do math, I wouldn't be an attorney. So I'm just putting you right there. But there's this huge amount, and he was able to follow the numbers. And you can see kind of in this sketch a little bit that she's already kind of setting out what Wesselberg had handwritten out on this bank statement to Cohen. So these are all, and he was able to identify his writing, Wesselberg's writing, and set it all out. So the actual details of the agreement is what he was testifying to, and he did pretty good for the state when it came to that. So he walked them through the agreement and what everything meant and how Wesselberg came up with the information. He also explained too that Trump approved all of the invoices and that we had to have that increase for that huge increase for that 130,000 in order again for that to be taken care of for taxes. So that was pretty devastating information. 2 million to be quiet. Yeah. So, I mean, Wesselberg's got his own thing going on here. He's got his own reasons for doing what he's doing. So next up then, everyone, we have Deborah Tarasoff. Deborah Tarasoff here is one of the secretaries that Mr. Trump had, and I think she still works there actually. She's not per se a personal secretary, but works within the like how the process works. So she would talk about the checks that she would take or give to Mr. Trump and send or FedEx, and then Mr. Trump, if he didn't want to pay him, he didn't pay him. But if he did, then he would. And she also talked about Mr. Trump's love of Sharpies as well. So there was quite a bit of her testimony, just kind of explaining this process involving the checks again. So again, just another step of saying, we have checks, you signed them in the Oval Office, you agreed, and this is the process that you use. So her testimony wasn't particularly damaging, in my opinion, to anyone. It was just setting up how the process worked. She still works for the Trump Organization, so of course, her testimony, I think, reflected that. Here's a copy you can see here of the sketch artist did one of the checks for $35,000 that was signed by Donald Trump. So that was one of the pieces of evidence shown to the jury, and that it's labeled retainer for legal expense. Boy, these sketch artists, I tell you, are just amazing. So she was testifying to all of those. Now, for those of you who remember or have been with me for a while, you know that we were able to put together, just for fun, we made little documents here of the check stubs so that we would have something physical, tangible that we could take a look at. So as I went through and created each of these, one for each of the counts, and then, so when we look at them, we can see which ones were signed by Mr. Trump. So September 12th was signed by Trump, so count 22 was also signed by Trump, so his own signature was on it. Count 19 was signed by Trump. Count 13 was signed by Donald Trump. Now, too, each of the jury is going to see this check stub with the number of the check on it, the date of the check as well as Mr. Trump's signature on each one of these. So count 16 was signed by Mr. Trump. Count 10 was signed by Mr. Trump. Count 7 was signed by two trustees. So this one was not signed by Mr. Trump himself. And then count 4 was a check and check stub signed by Mr. Wesselberg and Trump's son. So those two fellas signed it, and this was the check they combined two 35s into the 70s. So that was the count 4. So each one of these will have been shown to the jury as evidence, along with all of the rest of the counts. So I would say that's some pretty strong evidence when you put it over and over and you say to this woman who's in charge of getting his stuff signed, was this a signature? Yes. Did he sign this? Well, it looks like he did. So that's going to be pretty persuasive. And the jury asked people who are mentioned but didn't testify to figure out where they are. The jury's going to have a lot of questions, but whether or not it's appropriate will be up to the judge. I mean, they can ask whatever questions they want, but if the judge comes in and says, well, just look within the four corners of the evidence that we've given you, within the courtroom, within what you've seen, that's it. Don't go searching for further answers because, sometimes those answers could be in motions in limine. That information could be kept from the jury for purposes because it's too prejudicial. So, those kinds of questions are usually just like, thanks for asking, but, we just can't tell you that stuff. Does this jury know about the gag order fines? I doubt it. I doubt it. I don't know that would be relevant to this particular case. So his gag order on intimidating the witnesses would be more prejudicial than probative, I would imagine. So I would doubt it. In my opinion. Again, the jury is having a very, very focused, they've got blinders on like a horse with blinders. You've just got to keep them very narrowly focused on just what's coming into trial the whole time. You don't want them to stray. So is the jury sequestered? So that's a great question. And, sequestering means lots of different things. And if you're thinking sequestering means that they are kept in a hotel every single day and they're not allowed to go anywhere, that's not the situation. They do go home at the end of the night, is my understanding, but they also are not allowed to view any media. They're not allowed to look or answer or talk with anyone about the case. So I believe they have just normal sequestering rules for any other trial that anyone else would have been on. When it comes time for them to get into deliberations, that could be different. But at this point, I think it's just a normal situation. We don't usually force our juries into a situation where they, have to be in a motel room and maintained that way. Right. Well, it's going to be the honor system. So, and the thing is with the honor system with a jury is that you are swearing that you're not going to do it. And so if you do look into media, if someone catches you or you talk about it, which happens, and someone narcs on you, then, you're violating a court order and you're off the jury. So jurors tend to really monitor each other really, really well. So even though it's the honor system, it's also like they make sure that each other are going within it. Can the judge call in Congress members for violating the gag? No. You would have to have some kind of showing that Mr. Trump intentionally asked each one of them to violate the gag order and that they did violate it. So there would have to be that showing. That's going to be difficult to say. 5-year sentence for testing. Yes, it is, VC. 5 years. I mean, that's a lot of time. All right. So moving on here, let's go to our next. We have our next witness, who's Sally Franklin, and she came in. She is the Penguin, and I will always mess up that name. Thank you, Benedict Cumberbatch. I appreciate that. But she is the editor or distributor for Penguin and different. She's a top level, publisher. And she came in to read examples and excerpts out of Mr. Trump's books. So I did do a post on her testimony because they were so good. The state had basically shown to her the book and said, is this a book published by your company? Yes. And then, can you read this page? Yes. And it was all about micromanaging and making sure that, you get the best steal of a deal that you can get. There was a reporter who saw Trump texting the speaker what to say outside the courthouse. Well, if that happened, that you'd have to have evidence to back it up. I mean, you'd have to have provable, showable evidence that's to back it up. And then again, if that was the case, Mr. Trump is telling someone to do statements. That is part of the gag order. He's not allowed to do that. So he's not allowed to make those statements or someone on his behalf. So that would be, if provable, you could do it. I think it was texting, printed quotes. Right. So, right. But you'd have to prove that. You'd have to have some good evidence to show that. So, Miss Sally Franklin did testify. She did a pretty good job. She was just in the morning for a little bit. Again, I thought her testimony was actually very helpful in understanding what's going on. Basically admitted it in an interview. Well, fair enough, but we've got to have a full admission. We need a full admission and we need proof. Lots of people are throwing around lots of things to kind of be like, oh, whoop-de-doo-dah, look at me, I'm not having to follow the rules. But when it really comes down to it, show me the proof, or stop yapping about it. I guess I don't have a lot of sympathy for Tuberville, and I think the only reason why he would say that Trump asked him to violate it was to just get more views. I think that's really the only reason why he would do that. So, and here's just another sketch again. Miss Sally Franklin. But also, if we take a look also at the gag order, the question is anything derogatory or anything that is threatening to the jury, right, or the court staff or their family, right? Those are the three categories. So this kind of general, the justice system stinks and, everybody's awful kind of situation, that's going to be outside of the scope of the gag order. It's an incredibly narrow gag order. So in order to really show the intent to say something that's threatening about a juror or the jury, it's a high level that they're going to have to reach, which is why it's so crazy that Mr. Trump's violated it 10 times, because it's a pretty difficult gag order to violate, honestly. So, all right. So next up we go. Stormy Daniels was up next, and that was some testimony, everyone. I have read through her entire testimony and cross-examination. I have parts 1 and 2 up already. Parts 3 and 4 will be up by the end of this week if you are interested. So she came in because she needed to explain what this story was that she had to tell that was so important that Mr. Trump felt that it could harm the election, right, which was that crime that he was trying to commit, and also, the process. So she had quite a bit to say about that, and she did an amazing job testifying, honestly, as a witness. She was, Judge Merchan had said in some of the moments where he made comments that she was hard to control, which I think is true, which can be difficult and frustrating. But on the other hand, sometimes when you get a witness who's hard to control, that isn't necessarily a negative thing for the jury. It's negative for the court and for the attorneys because we're trying to keep you in line. We just need you to say what you need to say, and then we need to move on. But by being that level of strength, in my opinion, by being that strong can have a very positive effect on the jury. So I don't know. We'll find out after the verdict comes out how they felt about her. But her testimony on direct was pretty clean. And then pretty clear. And then her testimony on cross-examination, she did well. She didn't lose her cool. She didn't get pulled into an argument or a fight with opposing counsel, which is always great. So I thought she did a pretty good job when she did her cross-examination. That's really the key, is you may not agree with the questions or they may be offensive, and a lot of them really were offensive, but if you can still keep your cool, you're still winning. That is a win for you if the lawyer doesn't get you agitated to a point where you are just losing it. So she did an amazing job, in my opinion, on cross-examination, and she testified for May 9th and So she testified on the 13th, I'm sorry, on day 13 and 14. So day 7 and day 9 is when she testified. So we had a break in between because we were off on that Wednesday, which is an 8th. So she testified on the 7th and the 9th and did a pretty good job. I thought she did a pretty good job. Did she sleep with Trump? Well, according to her testimony, you can take a look at her testimony, which is available online in the transcripts. Here's another really great sketch that I found that I thought just really, I thought did a really good job of setting the situation up, because we've got defense counsel here going into this situation. And then she's over here taking care of business. So again, I was very impressed. And you can read through her transcripts yourself, or you can feel free to go to the Tube of You channel, where I have recorded all of them. 50% have been posted to this point. All right, wow, I've got a lot because I did so many readings of the transcripts. So this will be our final picture here of Miss Daniels. So there you go with that. Next up then, we've got on day 15. So we have, well, first of all, we've got, I've skipped around a little bit. We've got Madeline Westerholt. So Miss Madeline was, oops, I've got a puzzle piece. Sorry, everyone, just a minute. There we go. Did I get it? I got it. Phew, boy, this verification process, everyone. All right. So after Miss Daniels testified on day 14th, which was May 9th, we had the first session of Madeline Westerhout. Now, she testified for 2 days, day 14 and day 15th, so afternoon and then morning. And she kind of talked about Mr. Trump's, working business habits, I guess, or Oval Office, White House habits, how he kind of did stuff, what his procedures were. And she's a former White House aide. She was very empathetic. She was very Mr. Trump's a great guy. Love him. It was a great time. She published a book that was like, the greatest job ever working in the White House, blah, blah, blah. So, and she just kind of went into his practices. I will be reading through her testimony on a live very soon. I will need to set that out because, of course, I need to do Cohen's first. But it's interesting because when she was testifying, one of the key pieces to this case, everyone, as we know, is Mr. Trump's reaction after the Access Hollywood tape, right? So she had said, Mr. Trump was so upset. He was very upset about his wife and blah, 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 blah. And on cross-examination or on redirect, they said to her, well, wait a minute, that whole Access Hollywood tape, you didn't even know Mr. Trump at that time. And she was like, oh, yeah, that's right. So I thought that was some really good lawyering. That happened there, because she was trying to kind of build up this sympathy, like, it was so awful. Like, well, wait a minute, how do you know? You weren't there. So I will be reading through her testimony as soon as I get time here. Do you think this trial will have a similar effect? I don't know. I'm not sure at this point. I'd have to go and review that trial because I don't have that off the top of my head. Save her small space for learning. Yes, please do. She lied under oath. I think she got caught up. And again, I'm giving you the direct information that was said, but I don't have that full transcript in front of me to read. But I will have to at some point. But yeah, her redirect, and that's a situation where they called their own witness, and their own witness is kind of trying to kick them a little bit. And they're coming back and saying, well, wait a minute, you need to testify within the confines of our questions because we're not afraid to put you back in to your place where you said you were going to testify. So there you go with that. So we had her testifying day 14th, which is May 9th, and May 10th, so day 15th. After she testified, then we had another paralegal come in, and I felt the sketch was, done in such a way that it will not be harmful to Mr. Schneider. And he is a paralegal, though, working on the case. He came in and he needed to kind of set the stage for phone calls that were made between different people. So how the chain of custody was done, how that information was gathered, and from start to finish. So he was another paralegal that kind of set that up for us. So we needed that. And so he did testify then on May 10th, which was day 15. And then we had a second testifying of Miss Longstreet again. So again, that DA paralegal who testified again to Mr. Trump's social media. So she was up on the stand again. So believe it or not, everybody, that takes us then to Michael Cohen. So, I mean, I know it feels like we've been in trial for years and years, but now here we go. We had day 16 and day 17 of Michael Cohen. He went through the direct examination and has started his cross-examination, which will continue, no doubt, tomorrow. So that will be what we will have to look forward to for the rest of this week, because we really only have tomorrow for trial. And I am in the process of getting these transcripts pulled. And of course, I will be reading through Mr. Cohen's transcripts on another live. Now, he has testified for quite a bit of time, so it's going to take me multiple lives to get through it. But he will be the next reading of the transcripts. So Miss Stormy Daniels' transcripts will be up on my TubeView, the last part 3 and part 4 by the end of this week. And then the next one will be Mr. Cohen. So we will have to see. So far, he's been doing okay, in my opinion. But one of the ways of seeing whether or not a witness is doing okay is whether or not they're keeping their cool. They're answering the questions, clear and concise, brief but honest, and getting the point across, information to the jury without making a big deal about it. So, have you been practicing Cohen's voice? I tell you what, everybody, it's so funny that you asked me that, because I have been thinking about that, and I tell you what, any voice that I try to do for Cohen just becomes offensive. It really does. Like, it offends me. Like, my New York, New Jersey East Coast accent is offensive to myself. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We might do a little bit, but we'll have to see. We will have to see about that, but I'll work on that. I think it works out easier for me to we'll have to see. We'll have to see. The transcripts and evidence link, yes, and the merch. Oh yes, and the merch has been so much fun. Oh my gosh, everybody, oh, the merch. Oh my gosh, the merch. Thank you so much, BC, for that. Bring punch for everyone. Oh, so funny. Yes, so just a couple of final pictures, everyone, to finish out my list here. So we have had a lot of questions about cross-examination here. Oh my gosh, and here's some more. Now, I really do not know how long the defense is planning to go for their case. I do believe they'll be pulling in some experts on non-disclosure agreements, and how that's going to hit the jury, I have no idea. But we shall see. This is one of my favorite ones. Like, what's happening here? I don't know. I don't know. There's another favorite one here. I think this one's really good, of Todd Blanche. I really think that really gets his face. Oh my gosh. Anytime I see him out in the lobby area with Mr. Trump, his face looks so angry. I'm like, oh my gosh, sir, you tried decaffeinated coffee. Oh my gosh, yes. So here's another one where he's smiling. So he does smile. See, that was another good one. I can't help it. Oh my gosh, I can't, everybody. They're just so talented. Here's the bigger picture of that one, in case you're wondering. But we're very, very lucky to have our sketch artists working so hard, going in there with their with all of their supplies and trying to sit up high enough to see everything and to get the detail in here always looks complete. He does. He really does. He reminds me of like someone. I can't quite put my finger on it. Once I figure it out, I'll let you know. But he reminds me of like this angry character. I'm not sure. So here's another one, everyone. This was hilarious when we talked about this. Here's our super villain, super victim. I think we call it. What did I write down? The super victim meme that was involved. That was another great one. Are they performing poorly, or is it a reflection of what they have to work with? Oh, Sarah, that's a great question. I truly believe it's a reflection of what they have to work with. You know, I mean, you don't. We can sit on the sidelines easily, very easily, and say, wow, you could have done this, you could have done that. But when you're in the thick of it in the courtroom, you're really doing the best that you possibly can. Again, you're working on no sleep. You're probably haven't eaten. You're just barely staying hydrated. You know, you're just surviving literally minute to minute and trying to get through to the end. Not as an excuse, but as a backstory. And so when you're in it, you're not trying to screw up. You're trying to do your absolute best that you possibly can. But when you're working with rubbish, you know, your work's going to be rubbish. And I think that's definitely I think that's definitely a part of it. Yes, and then Mr. Trump has fallen asleep. Has fallen asleep a few times according to reports. Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. I know in the very beginning, after the very first or second page or second day, someone, and I wish I could remember who it was, but somebody had written something, tweeted something, or X'd something. I don't remember. But the line was, no wonder he's falling asleep because it's the first time he's worked a full day in his whole life. This is his first 7-hour day, and it was too much. Now, I know that's not very nice, but I think it's really funny because, you know, it's hard to sit in a chair all day long, and you know, to sit in a courtroom, you can't say anything, you can't do anything, you just have to sit there. And you know, you have moments where you're really focused, but then you have other moments where you're like, oh my gosh, you know. Who owns the court pictures? So the artists themselves own their work, and I'm sure once the works are published, they are paid commissions for that. So, and then of course there are copyright. I'm using them for purposes of education and public domain, just so you know. And we're not making any money off of this, so that's important too. But yes, it is their own work that they are selling. But yeah, I mean, it probably is really cold. He probably is extremely uncomfortable, as are the attorneys, as all are the jurors. I mean, imagine how the jurors feel. Like he at least has, you know, a stake in this case, and the jurors are sitting there like, you know, how am I going to pay for my groceries next week? You know, I mean, they're getting paid what, $12 a day to be there at something that's this huge, and their whole lives are completely for weeks shut down. They can't talk to people. They can't, you know, do their normal lives. I mean, think about how the jurors must feel. That's how I feel about it. So I get it. It's not easy, but it's really the jurors that are the ones taking the hit here, in my opinion. So I know. It's hard to pay attention. It is. But on the other hand, if you're a defendant and you want to look good for the jury, this is not a good look. This is not a good look for the jury. Because the jury's like, wait a minute, we have to stay awake. This sucks. Why do you get to fall asleep? 12, yeah, I know. They're not paid, you know, anything. But then again, the courts, how can they pay them? They don't have any money to pay them. So, I mean, it's a difficult situation. Difficult for sure. All the way around. Court's not fun, everyone. It looks fun on TV or in the movies, and that's where I think you should keep it. If you have a chance to do a crime or not do a crime, I recommend not doing a crime, all right? Court's not that fun. It really isn't. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's still awake. Did he violate the gag order? Well, we'll find out. We'll see. One thing I'm not worried about, and that is, getting reported for violating the gag order. I have no doubt that if that's happening, he's gonna get reported. That's not gonna remain a secret. Oh, you're on a jury this week. Oh, thank you so much for your service. We are so thankful. Why does he have a gag order? Well, I mean, if you look to see how the Court of Appeals ruled just yesterday, I think, they said it's for the safety of the people involved in the trial. So very, very simple. We've got safety issues going on with Mr. Trump. So far, they've not called you. Okay. Well, you never know. You never know. Pay jury duty or pay, yes. Well, and that's wonderful, Max. That's really wonderful because a lot of places don't. A lot of places don't pay you, and I mean, you are literally losing work every day, and it can be really awful and difficult to come back from it when you lose. I mean, in this case already, look, we're into day 17, but we're weeks into this. This jury has not been able to go in and work. Are the jurors paying attention? It depends on the situation. The reporting's actually been pretty good. The people in the room are saying like, wow, the jury is really looking at this, or they're really not happy about that, or so they're trying to kind of read the jury, although you really can't. There's really truly no way to read them, but at least we have some insight. So I think overall they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, they're doing the best they can, right, everyone? This has got to just be a nightmare for them. But we're so thankful. We need them. That's the backbone of our whole system. It's very stressful. Jury duty is very stressful. It really is. Can you tell us about well, this is a Mystic Topaz, and actually I can't remember where I picked it up. I know that's terrible, isn't it? I can't remember. Yikes. I don't even remember, but I have a couple Mystic Topazes. That's one of my favorite stones. So have they had to bring in any of the alternates? Is that something we would know? Yes, we would know that. If nothing else, it would be in the transcripts. So I have not read through the most recent of the transcripts, but I will have those, and that would all be listed in there. Yep, great question. Great question. We would definitely know for sure. So pretty. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we're just doing a little bit after my huge nails the last time. Sometimes I got to take a little break, you know. Thanks as always. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. So just heads up, I do plan to come back on tomorrow, everyone, at 7 o'clock Central. I will do a post in the morning or afternoon to confirm that, just to make sure everyone knows. And I am planning to start the Michael Cohen transcripts. So that is my plan. I will start with comments off and read through as much as I can, usually about an hour and a half, and then turn comments on, and we'll do a Q&A and kind of go through what's happened during the day, as well as any questions that people may have about his testimony. So that's really the time that I think can be super helpful for people, is to really ask those questions that you're like, well, why did he say that? Or why did they ask that? So I will definitely follow up with a Q&A, but that is my plan to come back again tomorrow. Do they go back to work on days there's no court? It's possible. It's absolutely possible. It depends on how their company works or wherever they're working for. It depends on what those rules are. They just can't talk about the trial. Yep, they just can't talk about it, but it just depends on what the rules are for that. So, yep, but I will be back. Hi, Kristen, thank you. I will be back again tomorrow, everyone. Thank you again to the moderators, always working so hard. I'm so thankful for your time. So I will be back. We will get into those transcripts tomorrow. It should be very interesting. And also I should have the Stormy Daniels part 3 and part 4 up within the next couple of days. So we will see you tomorrow, everyone. Have a great rest of your night. Thanks for coming.